All right, welcome back to another episode of Learn. Today we're going to do learning on boundaries. John Acosta will be joining us here shortly. We have Irina Portanova already and Bruno Gill here as usual, and here Kara Jean. We are excited to launch into this. I want to go straight to our manifestation coach. So talk to me, Irina, about what really are boundaries and who do we set those for in a
Oh my
manifestation world?
God, this is one of my favorite topic. And just before we went live, Kara, I was thinking to myself, you know what? The best way to answer it, how to set up these boundaries is to make yourself number one, to prioritize yourself. Because unless we really understand what we need and how to put ourselves first, it's always going to be the issue when somebody is crossing our boundaries and we allow this to happen.
Yeah.
And boundaries, it's like such a vast topic, right? Because it all goes back to our upbringing, how we were all raised, right? And obviously, if we were raised in the families where everybody was polite, everybody was teaching us to be good, to attend to others. And that's exactly the beliefs that we accumulated. But again, not to say that this is bad, it's great to care for the people, but nobody taught us to care for ourselves, because all the time it was okay, if we care for ourselves, we were called selfish, we were called that we are not care, that we do not care for others, we are only thinking about ourselves. So it had like actually a negative connotation. That's why when we were, as we were raised, and then as we were entering into the adulthood, then we realize how many issues we face because we allow people to cross our boundaries.
Which is a perfect segue right over to Bruno. So, speaking of self love, so if boundaries start with self love and learning to understand your own needs, say more on that.
Well, obviously, setting boundaries is like huge. It's like huge. Period. Obviously, you have to. You're not protecting. Like, there's a difference between protection and preserving. Okay, you're not protecting anything. You're preserving. Okay, because you're protecting something, that means you're afraid. But when you're preserving something, it means you value it, right? So you're not protecting yourself because you're afraid. You're preserving yourself because you value yourself and you know what's worthy of you and what's not, right? Clip this shit. And so
Bruno coming in hot right off the get go. Yes.
and so it's like it's I feel like it's a very fascinating conversation because the difference, like how you it's also about how you approach life, right? It's also about how you approach life. And so it's also about, again, your self-worth, right? Your self-worth, you can really dictate somebody's self-worth by the amount of boundaries somebody has. And but the problem is that, like, a lot of people, they're not even aware of it, right? They're not really aware of that maybe that behavior, maybe that cue, right? Maybe that cue that triggers them into crossing their boundaries, right? That they can't really establish. Maybe it's a ego trip, maybe it's a ego trigger, right? And but obviously that's things that you end up analyzing, maybe in self-reflection, right? And like, for example, like, obviously one thing is having the boundaries, but another thing is how to set the boundaries,
Yeah.
and understanding you have to set the boundaries. And to understand that you have to set the boundaries usually comes in self-reflection, when you're
Yeah.
asking yourself questions, right? Because self-reflection is very needed. I mean, you have to reflect about your behaviors, because if you don't, you're just going to keep repeating, and you're like a broken record. It's like, it's like, come on, right? But yeah, obviously, setting boundaries is very, very, very important when it comes to self-love, because it's a way of loving yourself by preserving yourself and not really protecting yourself to attract what's valuable.
Yeah. I love every second of that. And the and the way it links to what Irina was saying. So we have to set about, who do we set boundaries for? For ourselves. That is why we do that. We do that to and taking it from the protect to the preserve. We do that to preserve our sanity, our happy space, our energy, our time, all of those things. That's who we do it for, is for ourselves. And we're going to get to the what happens when we cross boundaries, because that's going to come up. But before we get there, I love the already leaning into how to do this, right? So in my world, that is, it's the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you behave. But I want to go back to Irina. So help us manifest some healthy boundaries. How do we start that?
That's good thing, right? Because it's like I love, Kara, when you're like like weaving all these beautiful patterns and figuring out how to ask the questions. So what I wanted to say is, first of all, you have to acknowledge what is something that you want to do. For instance, if somebody tells you, okay, let's go out tonight, and you are exhausted beyond the measurement, and all you want just to hit the bed and sleep, but you decide, yes, I'm gonna go because I do not want to upset that other person, right? So that's exactly what happens. You do not want to upset somebody, and you are actually sacrificing your time for self-care and rest in order to please somebody else. So that's exactly what that like a boundaries cross coming up. But it's more like uh unaware, because the person just gives you the invitation, right? So they do not know that that's what exactly they're doing. So it's up to you to say, you know what, I would love to, but I'm so sorry, I'm so tired, and today I just want to take that time where I'm just gonna hit the bed and I'm gonna rest, right? And for a lot of people, it's a long way to actually be able to say these things. Because again, we go back to, okay, I don't want to upset another person. I don't want another person to be, mad at me or think that I'm not a good friend. And it goes on and on and on, right? So this is for somebody who just not aware and does something to us. Or sometimes it could come in the nature that, and this is exactly what I notice in the workplace a lot, like if there is that person, and I was at one point when I just started like to work, I was the same way, like whatever people ask me to do, I would just do that, right? So exactly, so the more they come at me, I would be like, okay, like I'm gonna do that. And that's exactly where people did it already, like consciously, because they see that this is the person who is responsible, who is reliable, and like let me just push something from my desk to her desk, and I know it's gonna get done. So then we can talk about like how to actually like put your foot down, so to speak, and to start protecting your rights, right? Your boundaries. And let me tell you, I had a huge thing in one of my jobs. It was already like like I was changing multiple jobs, and that was the job when I eventually got pregnant with my daughter. So my boss was to the point that he wanted me to check in and check out every morning and evening. So, and then he loved that I stay longer hours, although there was no need for that. And I remember there was a deadline for something, and he would pressure me and pushing me to finish the project. And he would be calling me on my extension like every 20 minutes, not realizing that rather than, allowing me to finish, he would stress me out. So, like I can't focus. I'm like, like thinking about, oh my gosh, like I'm running out of time. And the funniest thing, what happened after that, he did not touch that document that I prepared for him like for 3 days or so. And you know what? That was the time when I actually stood up for myself, because it really hurt me to the point that I was like, he cannot do it to me, because although he has the like the title, but that title doesn't define that he is better than me.
Right.
And I confronted him. Like I went to the person, and she like really advised me what to write. So I copied HR, I sent it to him, and I was very polite, but I was very, straightforward. I said, listen, this is exactly what you asked me to do, and you were really pressuring me to do that. Yet you haven't touched that report for 3 days, right? So I just wanted to, like, and I was looking for justice, because this is me. I'm, straight to the point, right? Treat me the way that I treat you. But that was exactly like a great example where the boundaries were crossed, and he felt it's okay to do that because he was entitled to that because of his title.
Oh, sure. Oh, I love
But
that.
that was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. The ask, why am I saying yes or no? Like base
Mm-hmm.
level, how to start having boundaries. Because you're right. So many people are unaware, and people are unaware they're crossing it. It's not like somebody's like, I'm going to go out to cross boundaries today and piss people off. Here I go.
Right.
Maybe there's someone out there like that, but I don't hang out with that person. Odds are they don't know, but we definitely notice when one of our boundaries has been crossed, even if we didn't know that was a boundary we that could be crossed, right? Like before he crossed that, you wouldn't have, your boss trying to keep you on task would have made sense. But then when he forced and pushed, and then there was nothing on the other side, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it goes back to the why was he pushing me because it actually needed to be done, or just to push? That is not an okay thing for you. Yeah.
Yep.
And it doing that for you. This is not okay for me. Regardless of his position, his title, whatever that is, I am not okay with this behavior. Can we find a way to have a behavior we're both okay with? Love that.
And can I just add something for anybody who is watching? And I know a lot of times people are afraid to speak up because they are so attached to the job that they have, because the fear is running through their veins, thinking, oh my God, if I open my mouth, I jeopardize my, like my job. And what am I going to do after that? But let me tell you, the more you allow the other person to control you and to do these things to run your life, the more miserable you're going to become. And there is no way to do that. So the way I looked at this, if people value you, once you speak up, they're going to value you even more. And if for any reason they decide to get rid of you, it means there is something better for you out there.
Yes. I very firmly agree with that. And to repeat, if you allow it, that tells other people that you accept it. And if you don't feel good accepting that, stop allowing it. You have that right. Which is going to be an excellent segue over to Bruno, our self-love coach. So the very first step Irina pointed out, ask why I'm saying this, and then decide that you're worth preserving. Right? Like that's that very first step. So how do we, in a place where we are groomed, conditioned, and trained for generations to not be selfish, to make sure we're stepping up, to stay late, do that extra mile, push for somebody else? How do we go about deciding that we are worth preserving?
I believe that's all in the way we respect ourselves. Look, I can say I have boundaries in here and I have boundaries in that. And so I start saying that to people, I start saying that to myself. Oh, I've changed, I've done this and I've done that. And oh my God, I had, this whole plethora of like awakening and all that, right? Okay, good. But if I start showing people that, showing those people, right, that I told, not directly because I want to prove them anything, but indirectly because they want to watch it, right? If I'm with them, right? That those little traits are still there, right? Then even if I do have changed, and even if like I've done that like once a year, but that once a year I was with them, people are gonna believe that I haven't, right? Because you're teaching them how to treat you, but you also teach yourself how to treat yourself. If you put a boundary, if this is more than a boundary, this is more than a limit. This ends up being almost a to do thing, right? And you could have a boundary, which means not breaking. Let's say breaking your to do list is crossing a boundary, right? You could say that, right? Could say that, right? But that is entitled to the amount of self respect you have for yourself, right? Because And if you do not keep those boundaries, people will not respect you, because not only you're lying, right, but you're also lying to yourself, which is even worse, right? And so your worth gets damaged, the way you view yourself gets damaged. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe the way people see you gets damaged, but who cares? Doesn't matter. But the way you see yourself gets damaged, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, for example, you show yourself, let's say that, or you tell yourself, I have um, I have this to do and this to do and this to do, and I promise myself I'm going to do this. And then people don't do that, and they betray themselves, and then they wonder why the next times they say they're going to do something, they really don't believe it.
Oh,
Because
I
you have
love that. Setting boundaries for self. That if you want, so if you can ask that question, why am I doing this? Yes, is it for me? Is it for them? And then decide that you are worth preserving. You start doing those things for you. You tangibly set an alarm and get up at that time. Make that a wake up boundary and learn that you can trust that boundary. Decide that you're going to have yogurt 3 days this week, and then do that, because now you can trust that you have set a boundary for yourself and can maintain it, and learn to trust your own worth.
absolutely. And I'll even say one more thing. You have to limit the amount of triggers that will stop you from breaking that boundary.
Yeah.
You have
I
to,
love
you have to, right? But that comes with self-analysis. Like, you have to reflect about that. No matter if it takes you 3, 4, 5 hours, even if it takes you a whole day long, no matter.
Yeah.
You have to reflect about that. Because if every single time you end up on a massive queue, and you'll just end up doing the same thing you did every single time, you're there like, I don't know, maybe, okay,
Here again.
all this, all that, oh no, oh blah blah blah. But you'll end up doing it, so you wasted the whole time when you could have just done it. Right?
Yes.
Because
I love
it's like,
to train yourself first.
you
Set
have to.
boundaries for you. Train yourself to have boundaries. Like, do it for
I'm
you.
not saying like, exactly like,
And then
don't
recognize those triggers, because those are the boundaries that are already there that you might not have been aware of. And then talk about that with yourself. Have that conversation when you get upset when somebody pushes you at your job, even though they don't actually want this information for a whole freaking 3 days later. Like, when that comes up, be like, oh, so that's a boundary for me. Let me articulate this for you, because I just learned this about me. I am uncomfortable with you writing me when you're going to do nothing with the thing you're writing me to get. If you are writing me so you're going to do something with it, cool. That's a different conversation. But you're going to write me and then let it sit. That is uncomfortable, and I will not be okay with that in the future. I love that. Okay.
Mhm.
So I want to add in, because I love all of that. I love, ask yourself first, why am I saying this? Decide that you are worth preserving and start training yourself to live that way, because it is a whole personal work. For me, that means that it's the think, the speak, the behave, right? The magic 3 that I talk about all the time. So you start to think, I am worth saying yes to. Like, literally that simple. I am worth saying yes to. And then you speak those boundaries just like that. So, and Irina went into HR and was like, I'm going to speak this boundary, and I want to make sure that I do it correctly. So here's how I'm feeling. How can I articulate that in a professional way? Speak it out and behave it. Go to somebody, share that information. And this is where we're going to get exciting, because those boundaries will get crossed. I feel like in the boundary conversation, that part gets left out a lot. Like, I set a boundary, therefore it exists, and people need to know that. Except they don't, because the boundary isn't for them. It's for you, and it's in your head. And unless you are walking around with a list of boundaries that people can show people, here are my boundaries, here they are, here, and you just walk around with those everywhere, other people don't know. So 100% those boundaries are going to get crossed. But again, they're not for someone else. They're for you. They're to preserve yourself. So when we talk about that, when it gets crossed, when it does, what are some of the things that you can do to preserve yourself without having expectation for them to change? Because again, it's not for them. What are we going to do for us? Irina, talk to me. What comes up for you?
Okay, what comes up for me? Express yourself. It's so important to explain yourself. right? And like I said, again, it comes to the point that people have to learn how to communicate, because remember, it boils down everything to the communication. So everything starts from the communication. And if you know how to deliver that message, and obviously when you deliver that message, it has to be done in a proper way, right? Because it has to be without like any anger, without any anxiety, just like in a very soft, gentle voice. Because I always say, you can speak up the same words, but it's all about your tone, and it's all about the way you present yourself. And it's very important to express your feelings, right? Because then people might, kind of connect with you, rather than, like going all charged up about it, like almost beating their face, right? be more like be more like, you know what, I have to talk to you about something, right? There was a situation that really upset me. And sometimes it's good to put the pause, because
Yeah.
once you put the pause, you allow another person to register what you just tell them, and you allow them to question, to ask a question.
Yeah.
So this way they start like really participating actively in that conversation, rather than just be like, the passive listener.
Yes.
And that's exactly where everything, and again, it's all skills, right? And the more you do it, the better you become. So don't feel disappointed the first time around you're gonna do something like that, you are not receive the outcome you desire. Because the more you're gonna do these kind of things, the more you become in tune with that, and the more confidence you're gonna gain in the process. But it's all the process, and it's very important to articulate how exactly that situation makes you feel. Because
Yeah.
like you said, Kara, we do not work with these, like boundaries list, right? And a lot of times people, yes, and a lot of times people live in their heads. And a lot of times people making up these scenarios, the situations, the, like different things, right? So let's just clear it all out, rather than imagining whatever is not even real. Let's just have the conversation and have all the clarity on where we are standing and how everybody's feeling.
Yes. Oh, I love this. So, what I heard there is obviously communication is key. If you really want to have healthy boundaries, start to learn communication, build that skill, find a coach, find a trainer, take courses, do whatever you can do to communicate effectively. And then I also heard communicate with feeling, right? So, but and the real magic there is when you start talking about feelings, you're talking about me. I feel this way. I am experiencing this. I have this experience, rather than, which often happens when we are triggered, you made me feel this way. I can't believe that you did this. You crossed my boundary. Didn't you know that was? And the other person is like, nope, did not know there was a landmine there. Didn't know that was a landmine. Had no idea. I know now. Oh boy, am I catch? But I didn't, and that gets them into that. And now they're like, well, you didn't tell me, so now you're gonna fight. Nobody needs that. I get it, but you got triggered. But we don't need that. We can communicate through it. But for that, we need that self-love. And we need to be able to have so much self-love that we can reflect that onto someone else, assuming that they're not trying to hurt us. So Bruno, talk to me about that. How we do that.
I'm a coach, right? And so the last thing I want is lying here. And so I tell you right now, I am the last best example to talk about this, because I break that boundary so many goddamn times. Especially in 2023, if you have any idea the amount of people I opened my window and I literally said, I will destroy you all completely. And I'm in the middle of an avenue in the city, right? And so, but I got better though, right? But I got better. Got better. Because when you're really charged up, when you're really, really, really charged up, you do things that obviously you wouldn't do with a normal head, right? And so, for me, what worked, right, and what works a lot is cutting the problem in the root. I have realized that whenever that happens, it's not even because of what is actually happening there. It's something that triggered me before, and some way or another, I automatically destroy something that I know it will kind of be easy to destroy, because, I know it's possible, right? And that means people. And that is like a little bit like sadistic, but that's the levels I kind of went to. But you become aware of it, right? And so again, step one is to become aware of it, right? So I became aware of it and I worked with it, right? So I started reflecting. It was about that reflection that I really kind of understood, right? That I don't even get triggered by people themselves, right? I get triggered by something that happened to me, and then like because of maybe reasons in the past, some way or another, because I'm already triggered, that also triggers me. I start to get overwhelmed and I just boom, I just project. But when I project, it's like there's like fucking or Hiroshima and the other fucking city atomic bomb from Japan, like 10 times harder, right? Like something crazy. And so again, being aware and reflecting about it, right? And then saying like, look, this has to stop, right? You cannot be dealing like this, right? Because like, I mean, you don't live in the jungle, my friend. Like you live in civilized countries, right? We don't live in the 700s anymore, where you have a problem with somebody and you're gonna grab a spear or a sword and you're gonna cut somebody's head off, right? As much as it probably makes you feel like that, you want to do that, right? And you have all these fucking thoughts and stuff, right? You have to calm down, and so that's a good boundary, right? And so again, for example, I give an example. I talked about limiting triggers, right? The best way I limit my triggers is to cut them by the root of the issue, because I know that if I'm like, I'm all right, it's okay, I can deal with it. No, I cannot deal with it. I can't, but I don't have to. If I can find a way to cut it in the beginning, right? Because I'm not going to be able to deal with it, or I will in the wrongest way possible, right? And so if I can cut it now, like in the beginning, I'm like, okay, I'm getting triggered. Let me go. Like, let me leave right now before I stay here like 5, 10, 20
minutes. Boundary in place, I'm gonna take me out of this situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'd rather be.
Oh no, did I freeze? He froze.
No, he froze.
Oh. Come back, Bruno.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Okay, Kara, pick it up.
Randy's over in the comments. Randy, I can't share them on the screen. I apologize. But she's talking about how these are DBT concepts, which is absolutely true. So DBT teaches us that our experiences are real and valid, and we need to accept them as is, period. That is what we are experiencing. There he is. There he is.
Sorry. My Wi-Fi just, I don't know what the fuck happened. Anyways, whatever.
Okay, so what I heard with you is it's all about that recognizing those triggers, becoming aware of those triggers, and having that real conversation with self. That you now found a trigger, you need to cut that, which means you need to set a boundary there to protect and preserve yourself, to make sure that you aren't triggered over and over. Remove yourself from those situations. So I was sharing while you got cut off. Randy is in the comments, and she said that these concepts are DBT concepts, which that teaches us that our experiences are real and valid, and we can accept them exactly as they are, which is really powerful if we use that also as a reflection. So we're allowed to have our experiences, whatever they are, whether somebody else agrees with our interpretation of the experience or not. They are our experiences. They are valid. They are real, period. But that is also true for everyone else. So if they don't agree with our idea of what happened, that is real and valid for them. That is their truth. And if you can allow that for yourself, you can allow that for them. And when they cross that boundary, you can be like, cool, I get that is your reality. Accept it fully, completely. Awesome. In my reality over here, we ain't doing that though. So cool. Bye. Yeah. And you choose when your boundaries are crossed, because they will get crossed. You get to choose how you're going to respond. Again, these boundaries are never about someone else. They're about you. How are you going to think about this? Are you going to allow yourself to get triggered and open windows and scream murder to an entire city? or you're going to have one of those mirror conversations, right? Where you get into the bathroom and you're like, okay, let's talk about this. Clearly we got something we got to process through. Also, once you've decided how you're going to think about it, then you have to speak about it. That communication, Rena said it, that is key. If you cannot express yourself as your needs and your feels as true, real, valid, and without expectation from them, they don't have to agree, they don't have to disagree, it's yours. You're allowed it. And so are they. You have to have the both of that. That is the communication part. It is, what, otherwise you're just talking to yourself. You're not actually communicating. That's a two-way street. Yeah. And then you have to behave it. You have to hold your own boundary and choose your behaviors, not theirs. You don't get control over that. So if you are uncomfortable, remove yourself. If you do not accept these things, don't accept them. Walk away, shut the phone down, turn off the TV, whatever it is, do what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. What are like your favorite tools to help people with this? Tool time. Use a tool, don't be a tool.
That's a good boundary to have. That's a great boundary to
That
have.
is one of my favorite ones. Use a tool. If I don't know how to handle this myself, hold on. Let me research this. I will find a tool.
That's a good boundary to have. Like, don't be a tool. And I feel like, look, I feel that if you have something within you, right? If you have something within you that, look, I feel like I don't mind saying this anyways, but I feel like I'm a pretty vulnerable person. I mean, the neighbors listen to me, people outside listen to me. I don't mind. I really don't mind, right? But I had to be okay with that vulnerability, right? And so in the beginning, it was a little bit, I don't know. I don't really like what is making me feel this way, right? What is making me cross the boundaries of, crossing my peace to my, what is like crossing my peace to my anxiety, right? How can I prevent this? Like, what is actually making me feel insecure? Because that's the whole point of it, right? Was like, okay, I don't feel like the boundaries that I have are gonna make me be able to deal with this. So I need to create stronger ones or new ones for this type of situation, right? And so what worked for me was, again, analyzing what made me feel insecure and not make me feel insecure, because it's like being vulnerable is no problem. There's no problems in being vulnerable, right? And it's not about how people see it. It's about who is there, right? Are people like, because that attracts attention, right? So who is there? Are people there trying to hurt me? Are they like to try and love me? And so, like that fucks with you a bit, right? Because you're human, right? And so I had to learn a lot of other things. And so the best way for you to feel confident about yourself and have that boundary, right, is for you to destroy all your insecurities. So you can walk on the streets like you are the shit. Because it doesn't matter if for anybody you are or for everybody, but you know that you are the shit and you have reasons to behave like that. I'm telling you, like, your aura literally changes. Like you change, because it's like you're like walking proof. You are your own testimonial.
Yeah.
Like you are proud of yourself, right? And so it's like a lot of people, they feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to do and I'm very vulnerable, and oh my God, and this and that. But your anxiety is lying to you, number one. Because it's not that there's no answer, it's that the way you feel, right? Because of the way like you let it like boil up and boil up and boil up and boil up and boil up, it feels so hard in such a way to overcome. It literally feels like unachievable to feel in a different way, right? But that has really nothing to do with actual science, right? And with actual like tips, right? That's all emotion, right? um but for example, for me, what worked in that situation, obviously there were some things I had to give up, and there wasn't other things that I really had to focus on, right? I have to sacrifice some things, right? Which is completely normal, right? But like it's like okay,
What I'm
people.
hearing is like the idea that to really set healthy boundaries in that self-love space is you have to become your own judge and jury, and other people's opinions, whether they are telling you how amazing you are or how awful you are, it hits the same either way. Whether they're like, you're so amazing, I love you, you're incredible, you're like, cool, thanks. And if they're like, you're terrible, I hate you, you're the worst, you're like, cool, thanks.
Mhm. But also work on your insecurities. That's the most important
That's
thing.
it, right? Like that's it. The
Yeah.
letting go of other people's weight on your life.
Yes,
Let go
exactly.
of that. Yeah.
Yes, but that's, for example, I usually reflect about a lot of this, and this will be fast anyways. It's like, for example, when we are in peaceful mode, right? When we're in peace, because we all have cycles. There's cycles of peace and
Yes.
happiness, and there's cycles of trauma and overcoming, right? Uh, and a lot of people, they let the trauma come because when they were peaceful, a lot of people, they're not intelligent enough to be like, you know what? I know I'm wise enough to know that peace will never stay. And there will be times where there will be times where something can happen. Let me prevent that. Like, what am I insecure about even when I'm peaceful? I'm
Right.
insecure about this. Okay, if this happens, I know how to deal with this. Okay, one more thing to feel confident about. It's like if you don't give yourself reasons to feel confident about something, then you'll never feel confident about anything because you have nothing to feel confident about.
Oh, I love
You know?
that. Reflect when you are feeling confident on what things trigger you so that you can do it from a place of confidence. Yes. Johnny, welcome. Welcome. Yay! You made it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Unfortunately, I missed a lot, but I'm trying to pick up where you guys at.
So real fast recap. I can do this. So boundaries, it's all about self. It's about understanding our own belief systems, then where they came from, so we can set our boundaries for ourselves. And there are triggers. There are people who are going to call us selfish. All of that is true. However, it's not about protecting yourself. It's about preserving your worth. You are worth preserving. So what is important to you? And if that's the case, then ask yourself why you're saying yes or no to something. Is it for you? Is it for them? um, Decide that you are worth preserving, and then look into how you're going to protect that. So you assume that your boundary is going to get crossed because they're yours, they're in your head, and most of us don't carry around a document of boundaries so that other people know. So we have to accept that our experience, our feelings, when somebody crosses that boundary, it's real, it's true, it's absolute. Also, so is their experience that they didn't know there was a boundary there to cross. So we have to communicate that. We have to say those words. We have to think about ourselves. We have to communicate with somebody else, and then ultimately accept whatever their reality is and choose what we're going to do.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you. Wow, that was really good. I love two things that you mentioned just a second ago. Uh, One, which is a word that none of us like to hear it, but I don't know if you guys cover this, but the word selfish
I
is
did
not really
mention, yeah.
selfish. Oh, there you go. Okay. Not really selfish if you're taking care of yourself. And look, sometimes we have to be selfish.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us would like to feel on the other end or later after a situation happens. Nobody likes to feel taken advantage. And the only way to do that is by being strict on what we believe. And the other thing that I love that I heard was about voicing things. Voicing, look, for some reason, is the easiest thing to do. Easiest, but doesn't mean that it's simple for somebody or easy to somebody to. It's simple yet not easy. That's what I meant to say. It's hard for people sometimes to say, Like for example, I had a situation yesterday with somebody that I hold dear and near to my heart. And this person, she is so delicate with the way she says things and everything, and she can feel overwhelmed. And if I'm not paying attention to her uh, not non-verbal cues, if I'm not paying attention to her face, and I don't know that something is bothering her because she won't voice it. So yesterday, for the first time, she told me, "Hey, I need to disconnect. I hope you don't take this the wrong way." And in a way, I felt happy because yeah, that's not a problem. In the other way, I felt even happier that she was able to voice it because, like I said a minute ago, it's simple. It's very simple, but it's not easy. So those are my grain of salt for today.
Yes. I really love the first part because we didn't really touch on this part where um and what I heard in it is givers give and takers take, right? So when you're setting a boundary, you set it to protect your giving, right? So that you can give. So you can give completely, fully, without hesitation, with zero resentment, and to the point where you're comfortable. Not to the point where they're going to stop taking it, because there are people out there who will just keep taking. Absolutely. But if you have set a boundary there that allows you to know where your level of giving ends, then you're never going to be resentful of the takers or the other givers. You will get back because givers get, we know that. But if you don't want to get angry at somebody else, know where your line is and stop there.
Hmm.
We didn't. And simple is not easy. That is one of my favorite lines in the entire planet. I say that way too often.
It's true. I
Yeah.
always thought that it was very easy for everybody to voice their opinion. Turns out that it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Conceptually simple. Practically requires lots and lots of communication skills. Mhm.
Yes.
I feel like it's all the external pressure people feel of, like, how they're gonna be seen and whatever. But yeah,
But we do,
it's
and there's a root. I was listening to this guy the other day on on um, on a message online. I don't remember if it was a video or it just popped up on one of my things. But all this is rooted from when we were cavemen and cavewomen, because back then, if you wanted to hunt an animal, you needed your clan, you needed your people. So being rejected meant that you may not be able to survive. So that fear of rejection makes people stop voicing their opinions, voicing what really matters to them. Although now we don't have T-Rex and we don't have any big animals that we have to hunt in order to survive, because our society has evolved. Yet is that fear deeply rooted in our heads from the caveman era, and sometimes we don't realize it. I didn't realize it until I heard it yesterday. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
it was yesterday.
yeah.
I think that is so factually accurate. I know the science behind it. So yes, I mean it's built and it's baked in. The feelings are real. Like that is the overarching thing. Your experience is real. Your fear of rejection is real. Your concerns that somebody's going to judge you for setting that boundary or holding that boundary is very real. And also do it anyway, because if they're going to judge, if they're going to have that they're going to have that anyway. It's really more about them than it is you. And recognize that is that brainstem, that is that reptilian cave person brain that is still screaming at you, and you can be like, okay, here's a juice box, my little toddler self. Calm down. The rest of us got a handle on this, okay? Irina.
But
Oh, sorry, Bruno. I didn't
no,
mean to
no,
cut you
no.
off.
I mean, I was just gonna say something. I was just gonna say something quick. I was gonna say it's like a lot of people, they feel like special. They feel like kind of a lot of entitled. I used to feel like that a lot until I realized that, like, I'm not special. I mean, I was just the most accessible person for somebody to dump their shit on. Like, basically, because maybe if it was somebody else, it would be somebody else. I'm not the only one. I'll never be the only one. And I wasn't the only one before as well. Like, before I was born, that shit already existed anyways. And so, like, literally, you have to, because that's all ego. Like, that's your ego, like, coming out of you. It's like, we're injustice. We need to do something about it. No, 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 no. And we just have to humble ourselves and just really, right. Even if the nature of humility is, like, almost like humbling yourself, like apologizing, but now you don't have anything to apologize for. But that's not like, being humble is not just apologizing to somebody. It's understanding really the perspective and perception of the world that you live in, right? And just simply understanding that, we are not that important. That's it, right? Because that will free you, though. That shit will free you
Yes.
completely. Free you from blame. It will free you from shame. It will free you from guilt. It will free you from perfectionism completely.
On a regular, I say, if it's not going to hurt someone, like literally nobody is going to die and nothing is going to explode, you are free to go forth and do it. Go ahead. Have fun. I love it. Love that for you. Go do it. I'm gonna use that same rule for me though. You might not like some of the things I'm gonna do, but nobody's dying and nothing's exploding. So okay, I'm gonna go do it.
So
Irina, wrap us up.
Well, I just had another tool as we were talking about the tools. So it's great to reassess your boundaries periodically, because as we are changing, the world is changing, the people, the circle is also, like moving. Just to understand exactly what are your boundaries, just journal, write it down, and look at, like what exactly at the current moment, because something can be even pick up during different situations. So this way you could add to your list and say, okay, this is the situation that really requires me to emphasize my boundaries to that specific person, right? So just to reassess your boundaries and constantly be aware of that. Understanding, like, Johnny mentioned as well, that it has nothing to do with being selfish. It's all about self-care and putting yourself first, because that's exactly as they teach us on the plane. First, you put mask on yourself and then on the child. So if you cannot preserve your healthy boundaries, you also can step on somebody else's boundaries. Be more aware of it, right? So the boundaries are real, and once you preserve yours, you know how to also respect other boundaries.
I love that, the two-way mirror practice. Like, check yourself
Mhm.
regularly. Like, make it write it down. Get a journal just for that. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Because the more you can give yourself grace for that, the easier it is to also give grace to other people for that. We can both look in that mirror.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Johnny, anything else you want to share with us now that you made it before we close out?
No, I actually heard a few of the tools. They're amazing, and just want to thank you, all of you, for being superstars and holding the fort today.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
you made it.
Yeah,
Yay.
better late than never.
It's all about the commitment, right?
Yep,
So consistency, persistency, and that's exactly what generate the results.
that is right. That is right. So, Kara, you're down to close us. You opened us up. Let's do it.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for joining us to learn boundaries today. So, as a reminder, boundaries, we set those boundaries for ourselves. They're not for anybody else. They're not there for somebody else to agree, know, understand. They are there for us to understand and preserve us. And you do that by making sure you're using my language, the hashtag magic 3, right? The way you think, the way you speak, and the way you behave. The moment you are getting into a boundary conversation and it's all about what they need to do, take a breath, because it's not about them. Never was about them. They don't even know them, because there are boundaries in our head for us. So lean in that communication, assess how you feel, and share how you are feeling as a valid statement for your experience. And then allow theirs to also be valid, even if it's totally opposite of yours. It doesn't really matter. if they agree with your experience or not. It's your experience, it is real. It's their experience, it is real. What you then get to decide is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to think about it? How are you going to speak about it? Do you need to move your meat suit out of the situation? Like, as simple as that. Behave your way out that room. Okay, thank you so much. Good to know. Bye. And this doesn't make them bad. This doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make anybody selfish. It doesn't make anybody unkind. It just means that you need to preserve yourself because you are worth it. Anybody got anything else to add before we head out of here?
That was beautifully said.
All right. Well, until next Thursday, friends.
There's happy Thursday all next week. Bye.
Bye.